Welcome back to the Real News Network. We're discussing President Barack Obama's speech to the United Nations with F. William Engdahl. He's the author of Full Spectrum Dominance, Totalitarian Democracy in the New World Order. Thanks for joining us again, William.
Thank you, Paul.
So I'm going to play a clip from President Obama speaking about the global economic crisis.
We will work with the world's largest economies to chart a course for growth that is balanced and sustained. That means vigilance to ensure that we do not let up until our people are back to work. That means taking steps to rekindle demand so that global recovery can be sustained. And that means setting new rules of the road and strengthening regulation for all financial centers so that we put an end to the greed and the excess and the abuse that led us into this disaster and prevent a crisis like this from ever happening again.
So, William, what do you think of President Obama's comments on the economy?
Oh, these are very, very soothing, wonderful words. The problem is I don't see any steps concretely being taken by the Obama administration to actualize anything like a sustainable long-term economic recovery of the United States, let alone the rest of the world. And that's the heart of the problem.
Well, there seems to be two parts to this. One he talks about, which is the regulation of the financial centers. So one question will be, are they actually doing anything that will be effective in regulating what he calls the greed and excess and abuse? Then the other part is sustainable demand, and he doesn't mention the other piece of sustainable demand, which is the question of wages. It all seems to be about the flow of credit. But let's start with the first piece of this, and then we'll go to the wages side. Is the Obama administration moving towards anything that one could call serious regulation?
I don't see it. There have been some mutterings in front of the various congressional committees by the head of the Commodity Futures Trading Corporation, a former Goldman Sachs executive, about changing the laws on derivative trading for commodities and financial instruments. But so far, there's nothing been done on that. The Wall Street banks are adamantly opposed to any change in that because that's their cash cow. So speculating in oil futures or financial futures or credit default swaps or such things like that are behind much of the debacle, these multi-trillion-dollar expenditures that the taxpayers are having to bear. There's nothing serious being done to alter that. There's been a deflection by the Obama administration into a red herring issue of executive bonus pay for these financial firms. And, you know, when you're talking about a $5 million bonus, when we're talking about $2 trillion of taxpayer money to make good these worthless toxic waste debts, there's a dysfunction here of a grand scale. So there's a lot of political rhetoric behind the Obama statements, but I see nothing concrete that would suggest any hope for a serious revival of the U.S. economy.
What would you call serious? Like, what are 2 or 3 policy steps the Obama administration should take that you would say are serious regulatory steps?
Had I been in the White House, the first step I would have taken would be to nationalize the 9 or 10 largest money center banks and Wall Street institutions immediately, put them through a Chapter 11 reorganization using the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which is mandated to do just that with failed banks, and take banks that are too big to fail, like Citigroup, and simply chop them up into digestible pieces so that these kinds of Goliath structures no longer can blackmail the entire American Congress and the economy of the United States and the world. That's the real core of the problem there, and that nothing has been done by Geithner, who's a man of the Wall Street banking community, nor certainly not by Larry Summers, who's an old friend of Geithner's back when they designed the rules in 1999-2000 to allow this Wall Street bonanza to take place, the securitization, the Commodity Modernization Act of 2000, and the Glass-Steagall repeal. So, get the foxes out of the henhouse if you want to start talking about serious reform.
Let's talk about the other piece of this. I'm going to play this one sentence of President Obama's speech again.
That means vigilance to ensure that we do not let up until our people are back to work. That means taking steps to rekindle demand so that global recovery can be sustained.
When he talks about rekindling demand, when everyone knows there needs to be rekindled demand if there's going to be sustainable recovery, he doesn't mention the word wages.
There are two things to this. Number one, American disposable income for more than a decade has been dropping, and in the last several years, dropping at a catastrophic rate. The government official economic data is more or less at this point worthless. You can't rely on Labor Department statistics. You can't rely on Commerce Department statistics. There's so many manipulative seasonal revisions with tiny little footnotes that it's just worthless as an indication of what's going on. Most American families know the reality, and it's extremely brutal. Right now, families are struggling to keep their head above water. The stopping of home foreclosures, this tiny little pittance that Obama made earlier this year, has been used by the banks in most cases to actually increase the monthly payments demanded of mortgage holders who've applied for this program, such that they're forced to default anyway, and the banks are forced to repossess the homes. This is the private household debt in the United States is out of all proportion. It's out of control. That indebtedness was encouraged by Alan Greenspan's Federal Reserve policies quite aggressively, and the speeches are on record. The consumerism as a patriotic act was encouraged by the Bush administration, and Obama is doing nothing to deal with the core problem, and that is the household debt. People are rightly pulling in and trying to reduce their credit card debt, their other debts, so that they can survive and keep their family intact. And that's a very hard thing when unemployment is rising. Real estimates are that U.S. unofficial unemployment of people who want to work but can't find work is closer to 20%, not the 9-point-something% officially claimed by the administration. 20% unemployment gets to the levels of the 1930s Great Depression. We're not in any recovery. The green shoots that Obama is talking about, I like to say, are the grass that's overgrown the for sale signs on millions of American homes all across the country.
And far from sustainable demand going up, wages are going down. You can pick up the newspaper and look at strikes and various kinds of fights going on at workplaces across North America. It's all about concessions. It's all about companies actually trying to lower wages. So I don't understand where sustainable demand comes out of that.
No. And these aren't serious economists that Obama has around him. They're simply appendages of the Wall Street machine. Now, this may sound like rhetoric, but examine the career of Larry Summers, examine the career of Ben Bernanke, examine the career of Timothy Geithner, and you'll see that they are yes men for Wall Street the whole way. This is the money power that more or less has bought Congress on these questions.
Thanks very much for joining us, William.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network. Don't forget you can purchase Full Spectrum Dominance through our for sale sign up here. If you go to where it says shop, you can click on Amazon, or you can buy the book directly from us. Or in fact, the next 20 donors who request Full Spectrum Dominance and donate to the Real News, we'll send you the book. So please click on the donate button, and then you click on Full Spectrum Dominance. Thanks very much for joining us at the Real News.